All right, let's start with today's class. If at some point you have troubles seeing the screen or hearing me talk, please let me know. I might have internet connection issues or anything like that. Other than that, let's hop into the presentation. And with that, welcome to the digital sculpting class. My name is Lara Meyer and I'm a freelance 3D character artist. And about just 2 years ago, I was almost exactly where you've been. I also studied animation and game at HDA. And since then I've been a ZBrush lecturer and I'm now creating characters as a freelancer for Video Reality, NSYNC and others. On a personal note about me, I love ZBrush, that's why I'm doing this class. And I love coffee and traveling. So right now I'm in Osaka, Japan. Otherwise, I would have loved to join you or have this class in person with you today. But maybe we meet each other in person during some events like the semester exhibitions at some point. Then I wanted to show you just some of my work. I like to do characters, what a surprise. Most of the time I do them more semi-realistic. This one is also more on the horror side. This guy is also a modular character. Then we have some personal work. But today is not about me. Today is about ZBrush and why exactly you should learn ZBrush. First of all, it is the industry standard tool for sculpting. So this Godzilla screenshot is there for a reason. They actually also created it in ZBrush. Among many other characters that you love from video games or from movies. Then secondly, it can handle high-res geometry really well. At some point where Blender might fail you and crash, ZBrush is handling this geometry very nicely. And also it has tons of tools that are specifically made for sculpting to help you in your process. And before you ask, I don't hate Blender. I actually love Blender as well, and I use it for modeling, for UVs, but it's just that sculpting, at least in my opinion, and for the reasons listed on the screen, is done in ZBrush. But when we talk about ZBrush, you might say, well, the ZBrush is confusing, especially the UI. You might have heard some things here and there. But I also heard that the verification process was troublesome for some of you, and I'm sorry that ZBrush made a bad first impression there, or at least Maxon did. I hope we get through this together, and if you haven't already, if you don't have access for ZBrush today, just shoot me a message so I know that you are affected by Sheer ID as well. But this is also why we have this class for. We go through these issues together, and I will make ZBrush less confusing and more understandable for you. And one of these steps is also that we customize the UI. So this is one of the steps that I asked you to do before class, was to download and install the custom UI. So your screen should look somewhat like this. This will just, what I did here is just, I moved all the tools that are hidden in the ZBrush interface anyways, and I moved them on screen where you find them real quick. So this is just for you to save time navigating through these confusing menus. And we will learn step by step what all these buttons mean. To just boil it down to 3 points, this class will help you to learn ZBrush just from the ground up. If you're a total beginner, never sculpted, never touched ZBrush, this class is for you. For everyone else, we will learn a ton. Then you will also understand sculpting principles. How do I start? How do I even create a character? How do I merge shapes? How do I build this character from ground up? And we will also create your first polished 3D character. And a bit of story time at this point. Back then, we only had 1 hour of sculpting class input for each software. So it was 1 hour sculpting in Blender, 1 hour sculpting in ZBrush. Then they said, all right, you head off, sculpt 2 stylized characters, see each other at the end of the semester, and that's it. They were, okay, bye. So all of us were left off with like this big task of creating characters with lots of questions. And I don't know, we tried to solve these questions of how the hell do we sculpt characters by going through asking friends that maybe knew the software, by searching online for videos. Later, I also participated in some electives and also took professional courses like the one from Jay Hill to gather knowledge about how does the software even work. And this class is here to make this entire process easier for you. To give you a bit of insight about our class strategy, how this entire thing works, today is Friday, so we are right here. And each Friday, or at least the ones that are in the schedule, we have an input session where we talk about new topics and you get a new assignment. Then I will also do a small demo, demonstrate the new things that we learned. And then we break up into small groups. And each of you will work in these breakout rooms on your assigned task, and I will hop between the breakout sessions to answer questions and to give you guys feedback and just to see if everything rolls smoothly. Then on Monday, if you realized over the weekend or maybe on Friday, there is something that you like to ask or you need some additional feedback on your sculpt, you will have the possibility to attend one-on-one help slots with me. You would need to book them by Sunday evening, so in advance, so that I have an overview of who's coming. Right now there are 3 slots that are available, and I can adjust these depending on the demand. Then on Tuesday you will just have time to work on your task, and then on Wednesday I'd like you to upload each week your progress of what you've created until then. And this upload is required. You just put it up on Moodle by 8 p.m. And then on Thursday, depending on the week and the topic, I might upload a video where you get a short input on more complex topics. And your task there is to watch these videos. You can watch them at your own pace. You can pause, you can go back in time, just so you have so that you can go through the topics on your own pace. Then you write down the questions and you can ask these questions in the Friday session. And here is our small, I like to call it the Mario map. This is what our class timeline looks like. Today we just go over what this class is and the first ZBrush basics, and we're gonna have a small project where we do some sculpting just for fun. On the second and third session, we will start with our very first small project. We will learn more and more tools and implement them while hearing about them, so that you can start off with your main challenge on the fourth session, and we will continue this main challenge, this main character, until the end of class. The time until then is split into different topics, for example, how to block out stuff, anatomy, clothing, hair, equipment, rendering, and then the final delivery is in August. If you're wondering what do I mean by creating a character in this case, I first want to show you the general overview of how a character is usually created. And you might be already familiar with this. So you start having a concept. This one's done by Wu Shenyu, and the 3D model you can see here is by Alexander Navarro. So you start with the concept, then based on that concept you do sculpts with all the shiny, cool details. Then you retopologize, do your UVs, you do the textures, and then you render your character, put it into a pose, set up some nice lights, etc. For this class, however, we will skip this tiring process of doing retopology and UVs. Textures is nice, but we can't do the textures if we don't have retopo and UVs. What this class is about, it's about learning ZBrush and learning how to sculpt, so we will focus entirely on this part to create this high resolution sculpt. Then we will use Polypaint to give it some textures, and then we put it into pose and render this character. Rendering and presentation is most of the time underestimated, but it has a huge impact on how your sculpt is perceived. So you can have the nicest sculpt, but if your presentation sucks, basically people receive your project as less cool, and this is not what we want. So in your entire career as an artist, or at your time at HDA, you want to constantly level up this skill of presentation as well, because it's just so important. It's as important as the skill you are pursuing in the first place. All right, as you might have heard, this is a portfolio exam, so the progress that you create over each week actually matters. And this is also why we have these constant uploads each week. But there will also be like a final assignment where you upload kind of the entire portfolio at the very end. These feedback loops are especially important because feedback is your fastest way to improve while sculpting. And I can quickly see where and how I can help you. So to make this class to make the most out of this class, we have these feedback cycles in place for that reason. And yeah, talking more about the portfolio exam, like I said, it's in August. And what will be included in this final exam are the results from today, the project 1 and the project 2. Of course, I know that you are starting out with sculpting just now, so I won't look at the details of how nicely you sculpted today. This is just for having fun, really, and what matters the most is obviously the project that we spend most time on when you already learned the basics. So what matters most is the result of project 2, but you have to include everything so I can see your entire journey. Just to give you a rough overview of what will be delivered in the end by you. This is, first of all, a sculpting documentation. This is just a PDF where you compile your weekly assignments and some renders. Then we have the Z tool. This is for project 1 and project 2, where you hand in the ZBrush native file format where you can look at your final 3D sculpt in 3D. And then we have the turnaround video of project 2 because we dabble with rendering for the project 2 in particular. So we will do a turnaround video of that character as well. I want to be really transparent with you. That's why I also want to include the grading criteria right up front. But don't worry, we will get more into all these portfolio exam requirements, what I actually pay attention to, what is important for me at the end when we move closer to the deadline, so you have it fresh in your memory. I just want to give the criteria up front as well, so you can also keep these in mind while you are creating, for example, your finished project 1 or while you're creating the project number 2. So first of all, very important is the translation of the design, which basically means, does your 3D character look like the reference? And this is a skill that also a recruiter will pay attention to, and a skill that you need if you get hired by a company, basically. Can you create what the concept artist has given to you? So you want to pay attention that the shapes look correct, that the volumes are there, and the proportions match your reference. Second thing is clean sculpting. Basically, are your surfaces smooth? Do you have bumps everywhere? Or does it look clean? Do you have nice edges, etc.? Then the third point is subtool organization. Are shapes merged and separated as they need to be? We will talk about this topic later, so don't worry about it now. I will emphasize it when the time is right. Then at the end, we also have presentation and renders. And completeness, of course, is everything submitted and finished in the format requested. So here is what I will help you with this class, which is learning ZBrush, creating your first character. You get weekly feedback and also tips for more advanced students too. But there's also something that I need from you, which is you need to ask questions. Please don't stay stuck. I know it can be intimidating to ask questions. You might feel overwhelmed and not sure if it's like a good questions to ask, but just you heard this sentence everywhere, but there are no dumb questions. Just please ask. I really prefer if you ask the same questions 3 times until you get it, than just staying quiet and then having to ask the question at the end, or it becomes obvious that you weren't able to really understand what was said by just looking at the sculpt. So please just ask. I really like to help you. Then I want you to be curious and give ZBrush a chance, even if there's some Blender fans among you. Just give it a try, see if ZBrush is a fit for you. Then share your progress, even if it's messy. So regarding these weekly uploads, it is a requirement to upload them. And I'd rather have you upload something that is unfinished than to upload nothing. So I prefer you uploading something so that I can help you on the next day or on Friday with where you are right now, than just not knowing where you are at all. And lastly, I'd like you to fill out the short survey. If you haven't already, I can send in the link. I will quickly write that down for me as well. I can send in the link of the survey one more time if you haven't found it in the email, which is that you can just suggest topics that also more advanced students would like to do, and it gives me an overview of where you stand right now. Yeah, before we do too much talking, this is what we will cover today. We will talk about UI, navigation, basic brushes that you use most of the time. We will talk about subtools and what the hell this is. We will talk about the gizmo and Dynamesh options. So, does anyone have any questions up to this point regarding the submission, the course structure, anything like that? All right. Then we will do a short 5-minute break. You can get your ZBrush ready, and when we come back, we will actually jump into the software. I will show you some things and you can follow along and try out the brushes when I tell you. So yeah, see you in 5 minutes. Yeah, I wanted to mention that ZBrush has a lot of shortcuts and they will help you to move around in ZBrush quicker. However, all these screenshots and letters can be a bit overwhelming when you hear them the first time. That's why I compiled the most important screenshots, especially for beginners, onto the ZBrush cheat sheet. And I've uploaded an image of that into the presentations chat, so you can just have this image open on the side so you can kind of just listen to what I say and don't need to remember all these shortcuts, and you can look at the cheat sheet if you need to then try them out yourself. This should really make this process a bit more relaxing for you. All right, so if we open up ZBrush, we are most of the time greeted by this lightbox. You can click somewhere and move around and look through all these default projects that come with ZBrush by default. You also have some of the tabs up here that are useful. Here you can see the recent sculpts that you did. Then you get some extra brushes that you can also select. And one that is also important is the quick saves. This looks very scary. Yes. So if your program is crashing, it will most likely try to do a quick save right before it crashes, and you will find your progress here. So in case that ZBrush crashes, you have something left. You also saw that it does some autosaves along the way. So in case it crashes, you have some backup files. Nevertheless, it's always good to save in between, just saying. Okay, so when we start, and we usually want to create something by clicking on this Dynamesh sphere. I will just quickly show you how to hide this lightbox. It's simply by clicking on this button up here, and just to let you know that it's completely normal. This window looks pretty much broken. It's something that exists within ZBrush because it was first designed to be a drawing tool, and it later then developed into being a 3D sculpting tool. So this is why we still have these artifact things that yeah, we don't need at all for our project. So what we will do to open up a new project is we open the Lightbox, and then we go to the Dynamesh sphere. The project has been changed. Would you like to save? Nope. And you are greeted with the sphere, and on the right, the top, and the bottom, you should see the custom UI that you've hopefully installed. I will do like a small question. Is there anyone who has not installed it? Or let's ask the other way around. Were you able to install it? Any issues? Ah, yes. That is no problem at all. You can set your preferable color if you go to preferences and to eye color, and you can set your preferable colors here. I just changed mine to purple because I like purple. All right. Then one thing that might happen, and yeah, that happened also in the last class, was when people opened up the interface, it might be that some of these buttons are not displayed and they are kind of cut off because the UI might be displayed too large. And I had people just not saying anything until, I don't know, session 3 or 4, and then saying, like, I can't click on this button because it's not on the screen. So yeah, I figured out that for some people it is cut off, and this is how you can change your UI size in case that your buttons are cut off at the bottom as well. One that is cut off, at least for me too, is this one, but we have the possibility to double click on these arrows and we can also access whatever is hidden underneath here. But in case that this menu is not fully visible to you, we can go to preferences, and then we have the interface, and then goes to UI, and here is the button size. And the lowest value you can change it to is 38, and then it should fit on a normal screen, and you should be able to access all these buttons. Then, yeah, like I mentioned, you can open and close the UI panels to have more working space most of the time, because many very important things are in this tool menu. Just keep it open. You also have these arrows here if you want to add some more stuff to your scene, and also here to the left. Like I said, ZBrush is customizable. And just like in every other program, we have our big viewport right here in the center. Now comes to the question of how do we navigate in this scene. For this, I will quickly sculpt anything so you can see what's happening. So first of all, how do we rotate? We click on the background and then we just move our mouse. We click and drag. So this will move, and like this will rotate your object. And then if we press the Alt key and click on the background, we are moving our object. So just clicking is rotating, Alt and clicking will move your object. And then this one's a bit more complicated, but you got this. If we press Alt and we click and we release Alt, we can do scaling. All right, so one more time. It is click for rotate, pressing Alt and clicking for moving, and then pressing Alt, clicking, releasing, and then moving. Okay. There is also the option to press Control and right click. This will also give you the option to do scaling in ZBrush. So, mhm. Ah, yes. So if this happens to you and if you don't have any free space on your screen, this light gray border that goes around your viewport, it always acts as if this is like your default background, and you can use that one for navigation. So if you click here and rotate, it allows you to move your object, but if you're really zoomed in and yes, it makes it hard to navigate. You can press the F key on your keyboard and it will frame your entire mesh in the scene center. So it's F to also very useful if you kind of lost your mesh somewhere and you can't find it. You press F and it just pops into the screen and it's framed nicely. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. Mm, okay. So this class will focus on ZBrush for the PC. It is possible to also use the iPad version and sculpt on the iPad. However, the UI will be very different and it will be harder to follow the class. So my recommendation would be to participate on the PC so that you can follow along with all the menus, with all the clicks um, for the class. Yeah. All right. So there are a few more things about rotating and moving our scene. There is a plugin that allows you to use Blender controls for the ZBrush viewport. This one I will upload, like I will send in a link later or like at the next session, because for today I want you to try wrap your head around this kind of navigation, because it can be really fast if you just use the Alt key and the clicking, and it allows you to navigate pretty quickly and it's very efficient once you got the hang of it. There is also snapping to kind of orthographic views like the front view or the top view. And you can also use this head to snap to these views, but if you click on it and then you drag it to the direction that you want to look at your mesh. This also is a good indication where the front side or the side view of your mesh is. And you can do that by pressing, like by rotating, you click, you drag, and you press shift while doing so you can snap to the views. That's also possible. Then there's one more thing, which is perspective. With this button up here, you will toggle perspective on and off. So if you want to have this orthographic view, you just toggle perspective on and off. Most of the time when we are sculpting, we want to have perspective on because this is just how the human eye perceives the world. But for some things, it can be useful to toggle perspective off. We also have the floor button, which disables this grid. And yeah, before we create anything, let's talk about how we would go on about saving whatever we created. And there are 3 different save as buttons in ZBrush, and I would say only one of them is correct, so I will show you what you should not do. So the first one that you should not press is under Document Save As. What you will do if you press this button, you will save a screenshot of your screen, and that's it. And you don't have your file or your 3D mesh saved anywhere. So we never ever want to press this button. The second option where you can find Save As is under File. And if you press Save As, this one works as well. So this one is legal, I would say. It's if I hover over this button, I also get this small pop-up saying Save Project As means Control S. So this is how you usually also save files in different, like in Blender or in Maya. And what this one does is it saves a big file with also your version, like with your undo history and also some additional information. Like if I would move, for example, this scene, like the sphere all the way here, if I save it as file, save as, it will also like be moved to the top left. But most of the time we don't need all of that. So this is why, and this is also the cleanest way, we save it as a tool. And this button is under here on the right side, tool, save as. And if you save it here, you can just put in a name. I say tool number 2, save as. And then the next time I want to open my scene, let me go to the lightworks again. I want to save. Oh yeah, this is one thing. If you save it as a tool, ZBrush is reminding you every time you try to close the program, even though you just a minute ago you saved it as a tool, you try to close the program and it screams at you, says like, oh my god, do you want to save your project? You haven't saved your project. And this just reminds you that you haven't saved it as a file. And it wants to remind you, hey, do you want to save it as a file or not? But since you already saved it as a Z tool, you don't need to save it as a file on top of that, just so you know. And then if we want to reopen our progress from just before, we go to load tool, and here we have tool number 2. We click on it, we say open, and then we have our progress right here. It might be when you open ZBrush freshly, like I just started and imported the tool when I was here in the Dynamesh sphere, but it might be that you open ZBrush freshly, there's nothing on the screen, and you close the lightbox and then you press load tool, that your entire screen is empty. And when you say load tool, the entire screen stays empty. And this might be scary. Let me quickly demonstrate how it looks like. Something like this. And you say, oh my god, I loaded my tool in, but it's not there. But as soon as you click and drag, your mesh appears. And if you click and drag again, it appears again and again and again and again. And this is part of what I mentioned before, this very old 2.5D mode that is just there and it's confusing many beginners. What we can do here, and this shortcut is also on the cheat sheet, we press Ctrl and N to clear the canvas. We click and drag once, and it's okay if it's rotated in a weird angle. It's just important we click and drag once, we release, and then we go into edit mode. So we want to edit this object. And you can see if I snap back to my front view, I'm here where I'm left off. So this is how, if you save it as a tool, you can open up your project again. Also very important for all the assignments, when I said, okay, I want to have the project 1 and the project 2 handed in as a Z tool, I meant I want you guys to save it as a tool. So you go to tool, save as, because this will keep the file size smaller and my PC is not blowing up because I have about this much space left on my PC. So please hand it in as a Z tool and not a Z file. You are, however, allowed for your own project if you want to have the undo history. Even after reopening your project, you can save it as a file as well for your own purposes. All right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting question. I would need to look that up actually. Are you hoping to? What advantage would you like to have when saving it as a file? Mm. Oh. Mm. Okay. S- mm. Okay. So in this case, I would like to challenge you to, for your very first sculpt, whatever you create today, you will first go right under File and Save As, so that you have the very familiar way of saving your subtool and you have it as a backup on your hard drive. And then I will challenge you to go to Save As, save it as a tool, and then try to reopen the tool with the way that I described it. And I will upload the recording of this session so that you can look at the process step by step again. And then you might find that it is less intimidating than it appears to be. And for all the future projects that you have until the end of time, you will have smaller file sizes because of it. But just because I'm also curious, I will look that up. But if there's a custom, like a way to clear history before saving, I'll write that down for my notes. Okay, but just save it as a file, as a backup, and then save it as a tool in addition. Okay, it is. It is not. Maybe because I don't have. Maybe because I don't have delete older undo history. Ah, yeah, it was because I wasn't like I didn't have any undo history. So right now I do have undo history, and then I can go to edit, delete older, undo history, and now I don't have undo history. All right, that's nice. Any more questions about the saving part? Okay. Ah. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, I mean, in this sense, like in this case, it is possible to reduce the file size drastically because I would say that the like storing the position of the mesh and all the other things doesn't take up as much space as if you have like 100 or thousands of undo steps that needs to be saved as well. So this would make up the biggest part of why the file size explodes so much. Yeah, so that's great. Well, then since we're talking about sculpting, let's talk about how to actually sculpt with the brushes. So one thing that we definitely need to control is the brush size, which can be controlled right here in the panel. So this one, you can see the red circle is your brush, and you can increase the draw size right here. Then you can also see that we actually have two circles, the outer one and the inner one. And with a focal shift, you kind of control the transition between the inner circle and the outer circle to make to change the effect of your brush. So this becomes very visible if we pick the move brush, and then I move some part of my mesh, and you can see the transition is very harsh. But if I move the focus shift and make the transition area very large, you see that the same brush behaves very differently. And then one last thing about our brush that we can control is the Z intensity. This one is also what you think it would do, basically the like how intense the brush is working on my mesh. If I increase it, it's like really strong. Most of the time we can just leave it as it is by default. You can access all these here in the menu. The same menu also pops up if you right click, and you can also see here the draw size, you can see the focus shift or the Z intensity. What you can also do is press spacebar, you have the menu here available as well. And if you're really smart, and since you are changing the draw size very often, you can also use the hotkey, which is S. And in ZBrush, it's always like if it has a hotkey by default, you can hover over the name, the button, whatever, and it will already tell you, okay, this is the hotkey S. So if I'm anywhere, like I'm sculpting, I hit S on the keyboard, and right underneath my mouse, I get the slider to regulate my draw size, which is very handy. Yep. Then by default, if I pick like a standard brush, by default, I am with this standard brush, I'm adding volume to the surface. And you can see that by these two, Z add and Z sub. If you switch it to Z sub, you can basically turn this into a subtracting volume brush. However, the faster way, instead of switching these, is by pressing Alt, the Alt key. It will basically invert by every brush that you have and invert its direction of operation. So if I press the Alt key, I'm able to sculpt in, and if I don't press anything, I will sculpt and add more volume. Then we already talked a bit about the undo history, but it's up here. You can also press Ctrl Z, like in other program. And also what is working for us by default is the symmetry. As you were seeing, we already sculpting in symmetry. There is a button if you want to toggle this off. It's up here. And you can sculpt asymmetric stuff. And this button has similar, because you also will need it a lot. It also has the X as a hotkey, and it's easy to remember because you will use it a lot. Then if you ever accidentally press the X key and you continue on sculpting, and at some point you figure out, oh shit, my mesh is asymmetrical and I want to have it actually symmetrical, there are like these two buttons. The first one is mirror. It will basically just mirror whatever you have on the left side, on the right side. It kind of flips your mesh. But if you want to have both exactly the same again, you will need to press mirror and weld. And what it does is it copies whatever is on the left side and brings it over to the right side. So if I go back in time, I press, and I want to keep like this very rounded shape, I go to mirror, now it's on the left side, then I click mirror and weld, and it will copy whatever is on the left side to the right side. So if you accidentally worked in asymmetry, but you want to have it symmetrical again, you can do this operation and then remember to turn on symmetry again so that you can work on your mesh again in symmetry. Are there any questions up to this point regarding the symmetry or maybe the brush size? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the dynamic subdivision is a tool that is very useful, and we will talk about it in class as well. Dynamic subdivision can be found here in the right side under geometry. And then there's a tab for dynamic subdivision, and this button is called dynamic subdivision. Just as a heads up, like we will talk about this tool a lot in class later, because like I said, it's useful, but you can just toggle it on and off by clicking this button, and it should be like before. Did it work for you? Okay. Great. So there was another question. Yeah. It is, you press Control on your keyboard and you use the right mouse button. So instead of the left one, use the right mouse button. And you keep control pressed all the time. So it's I press control, I right click, and I move my mouse. And if I'm finished, I release the mouse and then the control. Yeah, that is also happening for me. So by pressing control, it switches this mask overlay. But if I use the right click instead of the left click, like if I use the left click, I will mask off my mesh. But if I use the right click, I'm able to zoom out. The other way would be to use the Alt key if that's more comfortable for you. That also works. So one more time, the zooming with the control is I press control, then I use the right mouse button, then I move my mouse. If I'm happy, I release the mouse first, and then the control. Did it work? Mm. Can you maybe share your screen? Is it possible? Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay. But is the Zoom working for you with the Alt key as intended? Yeah, okay. Hmm. So you press Control on the keyboard, but you press the right button from your pen key. Is that what you're doing? Hmm. Can you try and use the right click? Because I want to understand if the button you press on the pen is actually connected to the right mouse button. So if you just use the right click in the empty window, does it? Okay, so it's actually then not mapped in a way that the second button is not the right click in this case. Hmm. Mm-hmm. So what? Mm, maybe try. It's interesting. Hmm. No. Mm-hmm. Um, Keyboard. It should be, yeah, I mean, it should be to the settings that you set it to in the beginning. It should be on the clicks and then right click. Hmm. Yeah, it's doing the left click, actually. That seems to be that seems to be a very specific problem though. Maybe uh are you using your own setup or is it the setup in university? Hmm. Then maybe we can after class just troubleshoot that issue together and see if we can find a solution because seems to be maybe something that can be solved with maybe restarting, um, maybe updating the driver of the software that you're using, if it's Huion or Wacom or whatever, and that sometimes can help. Mm, okay. Mm, mm. Then maybe we have, yeah, maybe we have the option to assign the right click to, hmm, yeah, maybe some hotkeys on the graphic tablet if your tablet has some. Let's see. We will have a look at that after class then. Until then, feel free to use the Alt key and we will just see how it goes. Sorry about that one. I mean, it should work as intended if you select the right click there. Well, any other questions? All right. Then we will talk about the topics of different brushes. First of all, to open up the brush menus and see what brushes we have available, we press the B key on our keyboard. And this might look a bit overwhelming. These are tons of different brushes. Most of them, even I have never used before because it's just some of them are for very specific things and they are great for this very specific thing. But most of the time, you just need a handful of brushes that you work with over and over again. So don't be overwhelmed by this big arrangement. And there's also a quicker way to navigate this menu and get access to the brushes that you actually need. And the shortcuts for these might sound complicated, but I also have them on the cheat sheet. They are there are sometimes two versions, and that depends on the ZBrush version that you're using. So the first one that we want to select is the standard brush, just a basic brush that you can select. And for the 2026 version, it is B and then S. Oh, sorry, I had B pressed for the first time already. So we press B one time to get this pop up. Then we do S for standard, and then we get this like light small letter next to each brush. And this one is kind of the last button I need to press to actually select this brush. And the standard brush is BS. It's up here, and the small letter next to it is T. So I press T, and now I have it selected. I can also, of course, just select it right up here if I know where it is. So BST, or for older versions, it's BSG for the standard brush. And with the standard brush, we could do exactly what the name is saying, standard things. We just, yeah, it's a basic, soft, roundish brush. And for accessibility reasons, I've also put the brushes that you most likely need and that you need in the beginning just up here in the menu. So you have the standard brush right here. So you can switch brushes by clicking on these icons and you have them selected. But in the future, if you want to work faster, sometimes it's just easier to remember these shortcuts because you will also see me using these shortcuts sometimes, and you see the big pop up just very shortly, and then I switch brushes. So if I do that, I'm using these shortcuts, but you can safely select them down here as well. It's just the B key, B for brush. And then you have all these brushes, and then you do the second letter, which in this case is the S for standard. And yeah, depending on your version, like if it's 21 or 26 or any version in between, it might be G for the standard brush or it might be T for the standard brush. Yeah, all right. And yep, the next brush that I use personally the most for doing the concept phase, but also the professionals tend to say that this is the number one brush that you use if you want to build up your shapes, is the clay buildup. And it looks something like this, and I will quickly switch to my graphic tablet because I'm sculpting with a mouse, and this is a crime. Keep forgetting to use actually the pen. So yeah, you also get pen pressure, by the way, if you do with a graphic tablet. Yeah, the clay buildup lets you build up shapes pretty quickly. It's a bit more aggressive. It also has this stroke texture to it. And with every brush that you have, if you press Shift on your keyboard, you get this smooth brush. So if it's with a clay buildup, if it's with a standard brush, sorry, you will get this smooth brush. I will quickly grab some water and then we will talk about the other brushes. All right, there we go. Lots of talking today, so my my throat is already complaining. Yeah, so we covered the standard brush just for basic smooth surfaces, the clay buildup, which you probably use the most in combination with the smoothing because it does have a strong texture, and then you can smooth it out again. Then third is if you want to do like small crevices or anything like that, we select the damp standard brush. This one is B, D, and then S in the old version, sorry. And then in the new version, it does something different. It's B, D, A in the new version. And with this standard damp standard brush, you can carve in. It's by default, it's set to subtract. So you are carving in some nice patterns, and at the same way, you can invert the other brushes. If you press Alt, you can actually move out your geometry and do some nice edges. And if you press Alt, like if you release Alt and don't press anything, you can change between these modes. This is getting scary. I'm just going back to the default version here. All right. And then we have the trim dynamic, which is also pretty similar to the H polish. So you can, like, the difference is pretty close. You can use these brushes to do planes. This is great if you want to block out the planes of the head, or if you want to do some rocks, if you want to do some hard surface. It basically lets you create nice planes pretty quickly. Polish, like the name is saying. It's great. Then we have the move brush. You will also need this a lot. It does exactly what the name is saying. You are moving your geometry. Nothing surprising. And then we have the inflate brush over here. With this one, you can inflate your geometry. Looks like this. It is prone to kind of destroying your mesh a little bit if you don't pay attention. So most of the time, if you use the inflate brush, you kind of want to smooth it out again a bit so that your topology is not completely destroyed whatsoever. And that's it for the brushes that I use the most. There is also the snake hook, which allows you to basically pull geometry like more, pull it like stronger. It's basically a move brush on crack. And one more setting that is important if you are working on very thin objects, like in this case, these ones, and you are using brushes that are a bit more bigger and more aggressive, like the clay buildup, and you are sculpting here, you might see that your entire mesh gets kind of squished and moved, and this is not what we want. And it's happening because our mesh is very thin and our brush is very big, and it's kind of affecting the entire mesh, and this is obviously not what we want. So in this case, we have this button called Backface Mask. If we press it, then we can sculpt here, and depending on the view, like the camera angle that we have, it is automatically masking whatever is behind and currently hidden. So I can, without any concern, sculpt in this direction. It will mask off this area, and this problem of my geometry being destroyed if I'm working on thin geometry is kind of solved. Just remember that this option needs to be enabled and disabled per brush. So this button specifically is not the general toggle it on and off for every brush, but this one needs to be enabled for each. So if I switch to the damp standard, you see it's toggled off. If I go back to the clay buildup, you see it's toggled on. Just so that you have more control over it. All right. One more thing that might happen to you when you are sculpting is you have buttons on buttons in ZBrush, and if you are toggling the draw size, doing stuff here, you might toggle the dynamic that is on the draw size slider. So this might happen to you. We don't need this option usually, but just in case that your brush is behaving weirdly, it might be because you'd accidentally switched that one off. What it does is, let me first show you how brushes normally behave. It's like if I have my brush size about this big and I'm sculpting a stroke, these strokes are always the same size if I'm zooming in or if I'm really far away. Like, because I set my brush size to be this size, right? In comparison, when I toggle this off and I make my brush size small, and I sculpt something and then I zoom in, suddenly like my brushstroke is even smaller, and if I zoom out, it's way bigger. So this one kind of changes the brush size depending on how far your object is from the camera, and it's complicated to control. So in most cases you just want to have this one highlighted in a brighter color so that it's turned on and you can work on your brush, and the brush size is set by you in the slider and not by the camera position or whatever. Okay. Then, yep, what we realize here in this area is that we can't really sculpt in this area well. We moved out the entire geometry from the sphere quite a lot, and right now it looks like it's pretty much broken. If we smooth it out, we can see that there are just very, very few polygons left that we can sculpt on. And to get an even better view on this, we can press Shift F or just this button up here. It's called Draw Polyframe. You can see the shortcut right next to it. And what this does is it colors our object, and it will also gives us a view of the wireframe. And here we can see, all right, yes, we do have very little polygons. Very little polygons means we can't really sculpt nice clean forms. So what we will do in the beginning is, like in the beginning of every project that we have, is basically we want to block out big shapes, we want to make big moves, and for that we need to have a nice geometry. So what we will do is we use the Dynamesh function. In the UI, it's down here, and if you don't have the custom UI, you will go here in the tool palette under geometry, and then it's under, where do we see it? Dynamesh. Here, that's exactly the same button. And what we will do, we need to have this one activated. It is by default. And then we control and drag outside. So this is what, if we use left click like usual, this is exactly what we were trying, like what we got when we were trying to do the right click, but actually it was doing this. So if we press control and drag outside, we get a new mesh, and now you can see, if I go back, now we have way more polygons that we can work from. And if I use, for example, the snake hook, it's okay. And you see pretty quickly I run out of geometry if I want to do these spikes. And then I press control and I drag outside my mesh, and you see I get a lot more polygons to work from. This is great if I want to make big changes and do some sculpting on these. We can control how many polygons it is adding by changing the slider. So if I decrease it to maybe, I don't know, say 50, 40, and I do this again, it might happen to you that nothing at all is changing. Why is that? It's because we already did a Dynamesh and then we haven't touched our mesh. It's still unchanged, and we changed the slider and we tried to do the same operation again. ZBrush is like, bro, what do I want? Like, I already did the operation. I will not update this. So you need to change your mesh a tiny bit. You need to just grab it at some point, and if you do the operation again, it will actually apply your resolution. So if it's not happening even though you change the slider, it's because you just done an operation and you haven't touched the mesh yet. So just touch your mesh. I usually just select the smooth brush by pressing shift. I just touch my mesh. I don't know, you do not even need to smooth it out. You can just click one more time, and then you can do control drag and it will apply the selected resolution. For the beginning, especially for today, it's best if you just leave it where it was at the beginning. It's like at 128, whatever, something like this. And you get a resolution that is nice to work from and where you can make changes easily. This is for what we need for today for the most part. Just this dynamic, this Dynamesh. So every time I can turn this off by clicking here. It's a bit distracting while sculpting. Every time I make big changes, I control, drag outside, and I get new topology that is evenly distributed, which is best if you try to do sculpting. There is, however, another way of adding geometry that we will use today, which is subdivision levels. So, like I said, for most part of today, when we make changes, we want to stay with the Dynamesh. We can make changes like this and this and this, and we do Dynamesh, boom, we have nice even geometry. But at some point, we maybe want to do, for example, with the DEM standard, carve in some details, like here. And we can see, all right, we don't have enough geometry right here because it doesn't look clean. It's all messed up. And you could think of just increasing the slider here and adding more geometry, but this is not too optimal in this case. So once we have the big chain, like the big shapes, sorry, and we are happy with the big shapes, we can do a subdivision. And this is probably what you've already what you already learned in other classes like TechAd. You can add a new layer of subdivision. The way we do it is we go to the toolbar and then to, where do we have it? Ah, it's already open. All right, geometry, and here it is, the button divide. The reason why I don't have this button in my menu is because it has a hotkey and I just use the hotkey, which is Control D, but it's also very accessible here in the menu. So if we click this button, divide, we now get suddenly this slider activated. If I press Shift F, or you can press this one up here, we can have a look at what it is doing. So if I switch to level 1, this is how our mesh was before. And then if we switch to level 2, this is with our mesh divided one time, and it will have 4 times the polygon amount than it has before. So if I divide again, the polygon count will be 4 times higher as well. So with this slider, we can switch between the different levels of polygons, which makes it easier for us to work in general. So the thing is, if you block out your shapes, we use the Dynamesh, and then if we want to do this details, we can use the divide button. And here you see we can create very clean details and sculpt in some nice curves, some nice swirls for our mesh. I said that ZBrush is great with handling geometry, and it is, but if you divide it too many times, then even ZBrush at some point will look at you and be like, do you really want me to do that? That is a bit hard. And here in the top bar, you can already see I'm at 1.2 million polygons. Depending on your device, you might go up to 10 million, I think, is still okay. But everything after that it also will give you a warning. I think it has a system in place where you increase the polygon count for one single subtool because you subdivided too many times over a certain threshold. It will give you a warning saying, all right, that's a bit too much. You can manually set this value depending on your device, but you can try and see what your PC is capable of doing. If you hit divide and it's really slow, you know that you probably shouldn't do another subdivide after that. But you can do it a couple of times without problems. I think for my projects, the most I had or I used were like 7, but everything after that you probably also don't need because it doesn't make such a big difference anymore. Yeah. And you can also delete subdivisions. By the way, here are 2 buttons. You can delete lower, so that means you can delete lower subdivision levels, but if I only need subdivision level 3, and I created these out of this experiment, I can delete higher, and then it removes these for me. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is a great question, and it will just lead us through to what we are doing just right now. I will explain this, and then you have some time to do the Dynamesh and try out the subdivide. Just 2 minutes so that every one of you can do the Dynamesh and the subdivide one time. So it is possible to move your object with the move, rotate, or scale. If you click on these, you will activate the gizmo. This is what you probably are familiar with from normal 3D software. However, this effect, yeah, it might be a bit tricky because if I move my sphere and update my viewport, you see that the floor is snapping to my mesh. So you actually did move your object. It's just that this floor will always stick to the lowest point of your mesh. But yeah, you already did, you actually did move your mesh. It becomes more visible, and I will skip forward here just a tiny bit to see what I mean. You can do these operations with the gizmo, but I will explain these in just a teeny tiny bit. Like I said, just 2 minutes for everyone to like I said, I will cover this exactly if you like, if everyone has like or had 2 minutes to just try out the Dynamesh and the subdivide, and then we will jump right into this topic and answer your question. Is that fine? Okay. It's a very good question, very useful. We wouldn't survive without this function. All right, so like I mentioned, this button needs to be activated for you to work with Dynamesh. If in any case, for example, you had now this, I got this pop-up, I just clicked it away, but if you divide first and you have different subdivision levels, like you can see with this slider, and you activate Dynamesh, it will ask you, this mesh has multiple subdivision levels. Would you like to freeze subdivision levels before blah, blah, blah. Whenever it asks you to freeze something, always hit no. Because this entire freezing topic, it can mess up your sculpt, so you just never freeze, just hit no. And yeah. Then you can do the Dynamesh as before. All right. Let's see if I skipped anything. Okay. I think that should be everyone should be able to do that. I'm having a look at the time. I want you guys to have some time to work on your head, on your sculpt, whatever. So let's go through this topic of how do I add new objects to my scene and how do I scale, move, and rotate these as a whole object. So what you can do is, if you're creating a creature, and this is basically also the task for the remaining time of today, I want you to do some creature head, bust, just come up with anything, just modify the sphere in some way, add a neck, and you're basically done. Just have some fun, if it's an animal, a human, creature, dragon, whatever. And whatever you're creating, it probably has two eyes most of the time. And for eyes, we usually want to have a separate object. So now everything we did so far is sculpted from one blob. So how do we create additional objects? We go here to the subtool palette. If it's closed like this, you can open it by clicking on the subtool. And then we go to this magic button, which is called append. It starts with an A, like adding stuff. It's called appending here. It's a bit hard to remember, but it's just this append button. You click on it, and then you need to move your mouse carefully to the left side. If you exit this pop-up, it closes automatically. So you just from here go straight to the pop-up and you select whatever geometry you would like to add. So in this case, eyes look like spheres, so I will select the sphere. And if it's added to my stack, I need to click on this second tool to actually select this object. All right, so now we have a sphere in this scene, but this sphere is pretty big and it's not in the position where eyes should be. So now these move, rotate, and scale buttons come into play. These have the shortcuts of W, R, and E, like you can, it's the same as in Maya. And we can click on this button. Then we have this gizmo, and with these like arrows, you can move it into place. And then with these like rings, you can rotate it in the right direction. And for this one, I will turn on the wireframe again, because now you can see the geometry of the sphere, and it has this pole at the top. And for sculpting in like a tiny bit of the eye, I wanted to face into the direction of the iris. So in this case, I will go to the side view, or I can just select this red circle here, and I will start clicking, dragging, and you can see at the bottom, it shows me how many degrees I'm rotating the sphere. And if I press shift, it will snap to 5 degrees. So right now I want to turn it like 90 degrees. That's it. And with this small yellow box here in the center, you can scale your object. You also can scale it here with these boxes, just along the red axis, just along the green axis, and so on. In this case, I want my sphere to be evenly sized, so this one will scale it just in all axes in the same way. With this one, these white rectangles, you will move the sphere in the perspective of your camera. So this is not following any axis, it's just in the perspective of the camera. And now I will bring my eye into position, rotate it like so. Okay. All right. So it's gonna be a fun little creature. Now it's the thing, usually we have two eyes, right? So now we will use the mirror and weld buttons again. We can mirror our object and then mirror and weld, so we have a copy on both sides. And as you might have noticed, symmetry is turned off by default if you add a new object. So whenever you add something new to your stack, you need to activate symmetry again for this object. It shows like this setting is for like you can toggle it on and off per subtool. Alright, so I press this button again, and maybe let's Gotten some eyes. There we go. Okay. And I mean, same goes if I want to rotate the entire head, I can do that by going to this subtool. And there is one more shortcut that you might find very handy. It's you can switch subtools by going here. You can see the color is changing slightly depending on which one I have selected. Or you can press the Alt key and then click on the meshes. And this is also switching the subtools. You can see it switches them right here. So when you have tons and tons of subtools and you just see the one that you want to select on screen, you can press Alt and click on it once, and then you have it selected. So these ones, like I said, can be triggered with the hotkeys as well, for example, E and R, etc. And this is how I can rotate my head. If you want to get rid of the gizmo, you just hit the draw button or the Q button on your keyboard, and then you have it. Yeah, then you're back to draw mode. For sure. So if we have the eyes, we have just one eyeball, we can press this mirror and weld button. Mirroring, like I said, it's mirroring just one object from left to right. And then mirror and weld will create exactly the same thing on the left and on the right side. So if you click here, we'll have both on the same side. However, I said before that it will always copy what is on the left side to the right side. So if I click here, you see it's working. Whatever's on the left side will be copied to the right side. The only exception is if there's no geometry at all on the left side. If I click this button now, it does, like, it's saving me one click. It will create everything on the same, like whatever is right on the left side as well, if there's no geometry at all on the left side. This is why it works on the first click, but for the future, whatever you do on the left side, you click mirror and weld, it is copied to the right side. And then after you did that, remember to turn on symmetry, so when you sculpt, whatever you sculpt is on both sides. Any more questions? Okay. Then we have, oh, yeah. Yes, this option is there as well. We will cover this topic in session 4, so far in the future. Is that something you like to do right now? Or because right now for today, you can just have fun, do some sculpting, but I can show it to you as well. Just might take some time. Okay, okay. Then ah, for today, you are as free as you like to be. I think what I'd like you to do is to try out to do a neck, like something, oopsie, like just do some sort of neck or like some sort of extrusion, like at least that it's some sort of creature face, head face, human face, animal face, whatever. What I basically want to see is that you have tried different brushes, that you have opened ZBrush actually and created something, and in the best case that you appended one subtool, and that you tried out the Dynamesh and the subdivision. So basically just to see that you tried out the software with what we talked about today. So you are very free to create whatever you like. And like I said, whatever is created today is only sculpting fun. This is not graded or anything. Just do whatever you feel like, what your creativity tells you to do. Okay. Yes, so I can wait. I'm sharing only the application. Let me quickly. Um, I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly. Maybe if I explain. Yes. Yep. So maybe if I quickly go over these slides, it will answer your question. So let me skip to the end. So today's task is, like I said, familiarize yourself with ZBrush, navigate the viewport, append some meshes like the eyes, can be horns, can be whatever, sculpt with the brushes, use Dynamesh, and sculpt the creature bust of your liking. And then what you will do for the assignment is you upload screenshots of your sculpt, and this will be the front side, 3/4 side, and back view combined into a single image until next Wednesday, 8 p.m. So you have tons of time. You don't need to spend the entire time sculpting it. Like, you can just hand in whatever you did today. And this is what I'm looking for, something that looks clean. So please have a gray material for the screenshots. I will show you in just a bit how to do the gray material in case yours is colored differently. Then what is nice for me to just quickly estimate how your object looks like is to have the top and the bottom aligned. Here it says head and feet. In this case today we don't have feet or anything like that, so just have it aligned in the same size. And like I said, have it merged into one picture, so when I download your assignment, it's not for different images. This just makes it easier for me to look at your mesh. And have perspective on, and then you just hand in one screenshot and you're done. So no need to upload the Z tool or anything, just this image. Until next week, 8 p.m. on Moodle. Does that answer the question? Okay, perfect. Then I will quickly show you what I promised. To change the material, these are like madcap gray and toy plastic. These two buttons are sending you right into the menu of different materials that you can use to display on your mesh. So you can, it can be that when you open your project as a Z tool that you are greeted with this red color. Just remember that you can go just down here and select madcap gray, or there is another one, base material 2. It's somewhere here that's also like a great, just simple gray material. This one's a bit more shiny. I use madcap gray all the time, and you can change the color here. Some people say they prefer the red material. For me, I just feel like it's a bit harder to see the shapes correctly. And yeah, you'd simply change it by clicking on this button, select the material you like. And then there's one last topic, one very last topic that I want to talk to you about today, and then you can just sculpt in the remaining time, which is masking. And for this, we noticed before that if we press Control, something with masking pops up here. So if I press Control with every, like it works with every brush that is here, and I draw on my model, you see that I'm now drawing a mask on my mesh. And if I press Control without clicking anything, you see that it changes to the mask pen right here. And if I click on the mask pen, I can select from this menu, I can select different masking brushes that are useful. So the mask pen is one of them that you will use regularly. The other one is the mask lasso. So I click on the mask lasso, and now whenever I press Control, I have the mask lasso selected. With this brush, I can, I can mask off different areas of my mesh. And with, let's see, the mask square, I can mask off perfect squares. And with the mask rectangle, I can mask off just rectangles. So what I do is I hit Control, I click and drag to use these. for the lasso, I control, click, and drag to mask off these areas. Then what you also need is if you press Control and Alt, you can remove from the mask. So remember, Alt is reversing the direction for brushes. It's also reversing the effect of the masking. So if I press Control and Alt, I can subtract from my mask. And if I hit Control and drag outside my model, I'm removing the mask that is on my mesh. So Control and draw the shape on my mesh. Then I'm adding my mesh, Control and drag outside. I'm removing my mesh. So right here, your alarm bells might go on and be like, oh my god, haven't we just learned that Control and drag outside the mesh is the hotkey for Dynamesh? And you're absolutely right. It is the same. So how does ZBrush know when you try to remove the mask and when you try to do the Dynamesh? This is basically like this. If you have a mask on your mesh and you do Control and drag outside, it will remove the mask. If you don't have any mask at all on your mesh and you Control and drag outside, it will do the Dynamesh operation. So let me go one time back, make it a bit more obvious. So no mask at all on my mesh, Control drag outside, it applies the Dynamesh. So it's the same shortcut, yes. Then, when we are masking, also very important, we want to smooth the mask. Everything that has to do with masking will be on the Control key. So I press Control and I click on my mesh so I can soften my mask. In this case, the mask is fading into the black, so it is removing from the black part. So you know. Then we have also these here. I can also use the blur mask button, so it blurs the mask. I can sharpen the mask. I can shrink the mask. I can grow the mask. Sharpen, 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 grow, 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 sharpen, sharpen, sharpen. So you also have these masking tools here, and they are also hidden here in the menu under masking. Here you can find all these masking buttons as well, in case that you don't have the interface. One last very important masking hack is how do I invert the masking. This is by Control and clicking outside the mesh. So dragging is to remove the mask, and Control clicking is to invert the mask. Mm. Oh, very sorry. You're absolutely right. So if I have a mask, I have control over exactly this part of the mesh. And like so, everything that is black cannot be affected right now. So if I create, for example, this mask, I can only work on this white part. So if I pick the move brush, for example, make it really big, and I'm moving my mesh, I have everything else stays in place in this case, you know? So I can make changes and define which parts of the mesh should stay the same. So for example, I can also mask off, let's see, with the mask pen here, not the mask curve pen, but the mask pen, I create a small heart. Here we go. Then I invert by Control clicking. Then I use the move brush. I can move this out. It gives you control over the area that you are affecting. Yes. And I can also do the same, for example, here, and use the mask lasso, mask off this part, switch. Then I want to blur this mask, blur, blur, blur. Then I can use the move button, and I can move this, and I can make my brush really big, you know? And it will only affect the part that I'm pulling out here. you will need the masking a lot. And now that I created geometry that is really stretched, you know what to do. We use the Dynamesh, so control and drag, and now I have nice resolution that I can continue sculpt on, smooth out, and do some details. And that's everything that I wanted to tell you for today's class. Like mentioned, the homework for this week will be to upload screenshots of whatever you created today and upload them on Moodle. The slot is already available. I will also upload the presentation slides, and from now on we can just hang out here in the voice chat together. I figured out that for the first session it's best to just keep everyone together in one group, and whenever you have a question you can just speak up and ask, and we will continue sculpting for the remaining 15 minutes that we have. And if you have any more like specific questions, just let me know. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good question. And it's very useful. So what you can do is, in this case, I want to keep my eyes separate, so I will quickly append a new sphere and just put it up here. And I want to have this mesh to be part of the blob that I'm sculpting on. So we go and take a look at the subtool palette, and we will open the merge tab. It's down here. And then we need to make sure that we put the two meshes that we want to merge into one, right on top of each other. So I will move this one up here. So now my body and my sphere, the new sphere, sit right on top of each other. Then I need to select the subtool that is on top, and then I will click this button, the first one in the merge menu, which is called merge down. It will give me a warning that says this is an undoable operation because it will get rid of the undo history. It stores, like we can see here, it stores the undo history for my head right up here, and each object right here has its own undo history. If we merge two objects, it doesn't know which undo history to take, so it gives you this warning every time you do this. So you can't hit Control Z and it will split them up again. This is not working this way. So we press OK in this case because I'm sure I want to merge these two together. And one last thing that you need to pay attention to get the right effect, you want to have these two white circles on. If you accidentally click on the subtool here and there, like I said, ZBrush has buttons on buttons, you might have selected one of the images that are next to them. For now, it's best if we always keep the two circles active because this is what we want. Then we hit OK, and we merged this one and this one together. If I click on this thing, we see they are in one subtool now. Now, they are still separate meshes, though. We can see that the geometry is not connected in this case. So to actually connect the geometry and make them one mesh, we hit the Dynamesh. So Dynamesh has the possibility to merge these two meshes together. In this case, Control, drag outside, and now see it merged the topology together, and I can use the smooth brush to make it smooth. So one more time, we just stack them on top of each other. We select the tool that is on top, and then we go to merge, merge down, and then use the Dynamesh. All right. Mhm. So there's no functionality that I know of that keeps different brush sizes for different subtools. The only thing that I know that can feel a bit funky at times is like if you hit this dynamic button. This might feel a bit like weird if you zoom in or zoom out on your mesh. But you're basically asking if like the move brush, every time I select this, like the head, for example, that the move brush is big, and whenever I select the move brush should be small, right? I have never thought about this option. I will do a quick search and see if there is a possibility, but as far as I know, you just you change the draw size again, and with the shortcut S, you have access to the draw size pretty quickly, or like right click or space bar, which allows you to switch the draw size pretty fast. Or if you're using a graphic tablet that has buttons, you can also hotkey the draw size on these, so you have quicker access to it. But I will just do a quick search. Just to be sure. Mm-hmm. Um, so if you don't have a mask and you hit Control and drag outside, it will automatically do the Dynamesh. But if you do have a mask and you do Control drag, it will remove the mask. So if you have okay, then then it can be that you did a calculation like I did right now. And then I change the brush size and or like I want to have a low resolution. I set the slider really low and I do the same operation and I don't have a mask and it's not doing anything. This is because I just did an operation and I haven't changed my mesh at all. So if I just touch my mesh, for example, with Shift button, I touch my mesh or I smooth out just a teeny tiny bit, and then I do Control and drag, then I get the operation to do what I told the slider to do. Does it work for you now? Which of the masking brushes have you selected currently? So if you hit Control on your keyboard, which button does it, like, what does it say in the top? Mesh extrude. Try to do it, like, try to switch to mask rectangle. Like, this one is the basic one, the one where, like, it always works. And what you need to check is also if this button is highlighted in the highlight color. If it's turned off and I do this, it's not, like, even after I change my mesh, it's not working. This button needs to be highlighted. Are you able to share your screen real quick? And we can look at it together. And after that, I will come back to your question about the draw sizes for per subtool, because it seems like it is possible, at least to some degree. So we can talk about that in a minute. All right, so you want to merge, like you want to do the Dynamesh, right? And then Control and drag outside your mesh. Ah, okay, I see where the issue comes. Yeah, do that one more time and try not to touch your mesh. So the rectangle needs to be completely outside of the mesh. Control and drag outside. Could you press Shift F on the keyboard? So yes, and now smooth out like just a tiny part of your mesh. And then control and drag outside the mesh. And now change the resolution slider. It worked? Alright. Change the resolution slider to something really low or something a bit higher. And then control drag. So I think why we couldn't see any difference was because you had the same resolution and you wanted to do an update my resolution thing, but the resolution you had on your slider was pretty similar to the one that was already in the Dynamesh. I think that made it very difficult to see any changes. Ah, yes. So this masking, whenever I press Control, even though I want to do the Dynamesh operation, if I go to the Dynamesh slider, even though like, I have no mask, I've hit Control, it will always put me this mask, whatever mask brush I have selected. If I do the resolution change, wait, now I have the same issue. What? I need to. Yeah, okay, I forgot to touch my mesh, but um, whenever I hit control, no matter what I will do next, it will always show me the masking, whatever masking brush I have selected here. Okay. Mm-hmm. Ah, yes. So this works with every brush. Every brush I've selected, like the like the clay buildup, for example, if I sculpt, by default, it is adding volume. But if I hit the Alt key on my keyboard, the same brush will subtract from my mesh. Yes. Yeah, any brush. So the damp standard is, I think, where I showed it. This is the one that carves in. So with every brush you have, no matter what, if you hit smooth, it will smooth out. If you press Alt, it will reverse whatever action you are doing. So with Alt, this brush specifically will become to this brush. By default, it is this brush. And if you hit Control with any brush you have selected, you will switch to a masking brush. With every brush, if you hit Shift, you will smooth. If you hit Alt, you will reverse whatever you're doing. Yeah. All right, so let me quickly read. Yeah, sure. No worries. hmm. So we will cover the topic of especially the human body starting session 4. So the small project that we have for session 2 and 3, that will be a bit different from, like, for these sessions we start with the primitives and also merge them together and do some sort of blocking out body shapes with primitives. And then when we go to the like humanoid proportions, there we will talk more about also the importance, how important it is to actually have a low poly model that you can come back to and make changes to. So that part will be covered too, unless you mean starting with the base mesh, like a pre-made head shape base mesh or like body shape base mesh. That one we will also. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Mm. Okay, yeah, for sure. So what you're probably aiming at is the ZRemesher. I deliberately took this ZRemesher topic out of today's context so that it feels more like clay, just like a bit messy, just having fun basically. But there is a way to work more cleanly in ZBrush, and ZBrush is also very known for this ZRemesher functionality. So I will just quickly show what it does. So right now, the Dynamesh that we do, it will add a even mostly quad-based topology. Sometimes we have triangles. Um, this one is just for messing around, getting enough topology to do some sculpting. The ZRemesher, however, will do even more for us. So if we click the ZRemesher and like this button, it also is controlled by the slider. So if I go to a lower value, you will see the effect better. And I had ZRemesher. It does some calculations. Some thinking. Almost done. Ta-da! And then we have a, sorry, keep that on. We have a low poly geometry that actually flows in the direction of our mesh. So this is basically a teeny tiny mini retopology. And some people even skip retopology for their like meshes and just use ZRemesher, of course in combination with a few tricks so that it does exactly what you like to do. But this magic button ZRemesher, along with this slider and some more buttons that are hidden here, it's very great to create low resolution geometry on the fly that follows the shape of your mesh. And the next step that we would do after the ZRemesher is, because now we have a low poly mesh, we obviously also want to have a version that is more sculptable, where we have more resolution. And this is where we use the subdivide. So we go in here, where is it? Geometry, divide, divide. And then we have a mesh that has multiple subdivision levels where we can switch and also sculpt. Let's divide some more times, where we can sculpt high resolution detail. What was it? Ah, yeah, yeah. So the ZRemesher is really great. I just had the experience last semester, or like the last time I did this, that I was front loading so much input in the first session that it just became a lot for people who haven't heard any of these terms before. And also, it can be quite confusing to understand, okay, when do I do Dynamesh, when ZRemesh, when subdivide? All these different topics get mixed up so quickly, and you're like, okay, I want to have more resolution. What do I do? ZRemesh, Dynamesh, subdivision? So it all has its own place, and for messing around like today, Dynamesh is just the thing. And for if we work more cleanly, which we will do also starting next session and the session afterwards, we will all start meddle around with the ZRemesher and see why it's famous within ZBrush and how you can control it better. Because there are some options, like, for example, if I go back, you see I also have this like two different groups. You can also tell ZRemesher to have one edge go around these different groups, and kind of tell ZRemesher what to do exactly. But we will cover that in the sessions that follow. Mhm. Oh yeah, Dynamesh is, yes, Dynamesh is smoothing out these shapes, for example, also quite strongly. Let me go back to the moment I added the sphere. All right, so here we can also see right now, before we merge these two meshes with Dynamesh, we have a very clean, hard edge, which is great if you do stylized stuff. Most of the time we have very nice, crisp edges. In this case, we have the edge, but as soon as we Dynamesh, we lose this crisp edge. Even without smoothing, it just gets blurred out. there is one more advanced way how you can merge two different meshes that is not Dynamesh. And the problem is if we hit ZeroMesh, it won't help us in this case because ZeroMesh will not connect these edges. It will keep the meshes separate. It will create new geometry, but the new geometry is just not connected. So you can see now it created new geometry, but it's not connected. So instead of doing the Dynamesh, instead of doing the ZeroMesh, there's one more hack. And it's hidden in a very weird place. And like I said, for everyone that hasn't touched ZBrush before today, you don't need to listen. We will cover exactly this hack later as well, because it is really good. But just for you today, if we go to the gizmo, we can talk about that here, and we go to the gear icon, then we can do this remesh by union. So what it does a small calculation. It now gives me this big box, which basically says, look at that, I will merge everything that is inside this box. Do you want this to be merged? And then we still see the small gear icon, and then we see this is the modifier. It is not applied, this is just a preview, and we need to hit accept. And we hit accept, then, ta-da! And we zoom in real close, because I made this so big. We can see that these two are now connected geometry. So if I would pick the smooth brush, this is now getting all very teeny tiny. If I use the smooth brush, this is actually connected geometry, but it is just really crisp. And now after we did this kind of merging together, we can use the ZeroMesher in conjunction with another tool, which is called here, where do you go? ZeroMesher has its own tab here under Tool, Geometry, and then ZeroMesher. And then there's a button called Keep Groups. Keep Groups right here. And the green one and the red one, they are different groups. They are connected geometry. If we do the ZeroMesher now, it will create a crisp loop around that edge. So just, I hope this is what you meant. Let's give it a second to load. There we go. So right now we have like a clean edge of geometry that goes around this. It's a bit too low maybe. So yeah, Dynamesh would destroy this, but ZeroMesher keeps the crisp edges. Just loading. There we go. So now we have a low resolution mesh, and we have the two meshes merged together, but they still have the very crisp line. Is that what you were asking for? Okay. Nice. And then if you, because it seems like you already did like meddled a lot with ZBrush, I can also tell you that. Have you touched the ZModeler before? So so yeah, I will tell you, like, give you a little secret, something you might remember, is if you go to, maybe it is possible in another way. Wait, let me do that without the ZModeler. You can go to crease, if these are two different groups actually, and you can do crease polygroup. So then this one is creased, and it is highlighted with this tiny dotted line. It's so small, even I can barely see it, but believe me, it's there. Because these are two different groups, I can go to crease and then crease polygroup. Now if I subdivide and use the button that I used all the time, this edge will, oopsie, this edge will always stay very crisp, even though I did lots of subdividing. If I don't do the creasing, I can also go and uncrease, and then wait, go back in time, or just delete higher, wait, delete higher. So right now I have a clean edge. If I don't do the creasing, so uncrease polygroup, if I do the subdividing, it will still blur out. So the creasing is important to tell ZBrush, if I do subdivisions, which edges should stay sharp. So this is what you do with the creasing. And if you don't have two different groups for this, and let's say with Control and W you make everything one color, you can use the Z modeler to do hover over the edge, right click, and then crease, edge loop complete, and then you click on the edge. Ah, shit. And now ZBrush betrays me. Let's see. Crease, edge loop partial. Here we go. It's because the geometry isn't as perfect as I want it to be. It's not perfect circles, so to say. I need to do some manual work too. But yeah, you can also go here and crease these manually. And then it should work in the same way. Yeah, but no worries. But for everyone else, don't worry. Everyone will learn this at some point. It just doesn't need to be today. I'm not expecting something like this for today. Just have fun doing some sculpting. But I'm happy to to show these small tricks. If you have, like, if anything else comes to your mind that you learned before that you want to remember again, you can just tell me. But yeah, with that, we have been here together for 10 minutes longer than I promised you guys to keep you away from weekend. So if there aren't any more questions, then I would release you into the weekend. Remember to upload the screenshots of your sculpt until next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. And other than that, see you guys in the next session. It was fun talking to you. I love that you were asking questions. That's what I like. I like to answer them because I know that you are listening, that you try to follow along. So that also keeps me motivated. And then see each other next week. Bye bye.